Hi, everyone. Welcome to this episode of FinTV. Today, I'm joined by Thilak Mahendran, who is the Senior Client Engagement Lead, AI at IBM. Thilak, thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for being here on FinTV.
Hi there, thanks for having me.
Well, why don't we do this? I like to always ask people, tell us a little bit about yourself and, your journey so far and what you've been up to.
Sure. So, as you said, my name is Thilak Mahendran, 30 years of age, and I've been with IBM for the past 7 years now because I've always been passionate about technology, software, and for the past 5, 6 years now also artificial intelligence. And I've had the pleasure of building this center that we have here in Munich, our IBM Watson headquarter here in Europe and in Germany. And it's been an exciting past 3-4 years to witness and observe our client discussions, how it's evolved from, huge excitement about artificial intelligence. There's so many possibilities that we can do perhaps we should pay attention to certain elements here. So there's been lots and lots of things happening here. I'd say my main role here within the IBM Watson Center for the past 3 years has been understanding our clients' needs in the field of AI and helping and supporting them on their journey on creating artificial intelligence applications, whether it be a chatbot, whether it's understanding the health of your devices that the client may have in the client space. And for the past year now, I've also been heavily involved in the space of how do we create trustworthy AI? How do we create explainability or integrate this explainability into the capabilities? And for me personally, this has been an important step because I've always seen in life beforehand, there are certain things that don't seem quite as fair, where I assume some bias in this. And we've seen certain elements of this about 3-4 years ago. So I'm excited to drive this topic here at IBM.
Well, let's just dive in, I guess. For full disclosure, and one of the things that you said to me when we first started talking was that you're not a supply chain expert. So what we're going to do is we're going to keep this conversation more along the lines of AI. And the reason I wanted to chat with you is because a lot of our audience, a lot of our supply chain members have been hearing about the wonders of AI for a long time. And it almost it's as though AI is going to be this magic bullet that's going to solve all the problems, right? So talk to us about how one can use practical applications for AI.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you correctly said, I'm not a supply chain expert as such. So here within the center, I've had many interactions with cross-industry clients, different types of industries. And as you correctly said, I would say in 2016, we've had this big moment of, hey, we have this area we can focus on, we have that area focusing on. So we've had lots of clients coming to us to understand what are the possibilities. So how can we, for example, include AI in our machinery to understand what are the sensors telling us right now? What things can we extract and extrapolate from this to perhaps even predict future outages for certain systems? So we typically have very large clients here in the center, which means one machine or a day downtime in the machine would mean a big financial hit to the specific plant. So that could be one specific thing that can be done. We've also explored then at the same time a number of chatbots. So how can we integrate some AI functionalities into existing web pages, right? So now we've reached a stage where we are trying to understand how we can use chatbots, for example, for accessibility. How can we make this accessible for the older generation who may feel more comfortable using a telephone to call people? Can we include it there within the call? So these types of discussions that we typically have here in the Watson Center. Another exciting aspect, I think, is also the space of autonomous driving. So we have a number of projects there right now, understanding different methodologies and methods of building these algorithms, whether it will be supervised learning, where we teach the system what is a good picture, what is a bad image, whether it's unsupervised learning, where the system itself is identifying different clusters to then draw a conclusion from this, or whether it's reinforcement learning, which is extremely exciting. You tell the system, hey, this is the outcome I want to achieve. I'll give you about 2 weeks now. You knock yourself out, 24/7, try out different types of things and see what the output is on this. So lots of different exciting topics What we've, however, seen now is also that we need to truly understand what we really want to achieve with our AI systems. This is something that was missing in the first few years, where it was more of a general interest. And I think that has greatly changed in the past 24 months.
Well, you talk about how you help clients through the journey of trying to get AI implemented into their businesses. I guess the first thing that you do must be listen to people, understand what problems they're trying to solve. Do you think that there's still sort of a feeling in the industry a little bit about people saying, "Well, I just want AI," and they maybe don't even understand what it could do for them or why they're getting it?
Right. I'll speak a little behind the scenes about what usually takes place here in the center. It's fascinating to see, we have really good pre-discussions with our clients, direct discussions with our clients before they get to the center. And we get a fairly good understanding of whether the client is at a mature level within the AI space. And we typically ask certain questions to just get a gist of the overall understanding of the client, because when we do see the need of reiterating that, perhaps a different system may make sense, we have a number of strategies to try and get to this answer, or perhaps to a different answer, but jointly getting to this answer. We have a number of agile methodologies to apply to this during our client visit to truly understand what the end goal is, because typically from experience, those clients who haven't had the chance to invest lots of time into truly understanding how AI systems work today, seem to have a higher possibility of having this prediction or the expectation that this particular AI system will not just solve the customer relationship problem, but also solve at the same time or find the cure for cancer. We're at a fairly different stage in the AI world now. We do call it narrow AI. There's a good reason why we still call it a narrow AI, because the AI systems we build today are fantastic at solving this particular one problem. For example, quality inspection for LCD panels. They can understand it because it's a fairly absolute answer, whether it's a damage or not a damage. And that's not always the case with our client examples that we have there. And we are still working on understanding how to extract the right answers, but the methodologies do help here. Design thinking would be one of the bigger ones.
So I guess if a company were looking at implementing AI, and again, I mean, I can only tell you the number of podcasts I've had where I've talked to people about, you know, AI, machine learning, implementing it. It's like everybody knows they want it, but they kind of don't know why they want it or how they're going to get it. Do you think that if I'm hearing you right, for a company to succeed with the implementation of AI, they kind of need to understand what it is they're trying to solve, what processes they have, what they've got right now that's working. And I guess this applies for all digital transformation. What is it that I'm trying to solve? How is it going to bring me closer to my client? What do you think, in your experience, in terms of the implementation of AI, why do companies succeed and why do they fail?
Absolutely. I think you mentioned one particular sentence of understanding what you really want to achieve. We get a number of requests of we want an AI chatbot. However, when we do ask the question of why do you require an AI or HR chatbot or whatever chatbot you would like, the answer is our customers are expecting this. Did you do some customer research to truly understand this? No, this was actually based off 2 complaints that they received out of the 600 emails that they received based on the system that they introduced. So here, truly understanding, would perhaps an extra channel, an offline channel, make more sense to solve this particular example? So for this, we have we've tried out a number of methodologies here, in particular understanding, doing a bigger prioritization on the next steps that the client would like to take on their AI journey. When we have more time, we do a full-blown workshop that typically takes about 2 days to truly understand what are the main pain points of the client, so that we can then truly map this to the AI systems that we have. Based on this, once we have the idea, we also strongly believe that you need to also include agile methodologies in the development of this. So we are working, so for example, here in the Watson Center in Munich, we have our so-called IBM Garage, where we have a number of developers, also the lead developer for the IBM Garage, which is quite exciting to have such talented people here. So typically what we do is after we've done such a workshop for about 2 days, we then pull in our Garage people, because our Garage guys and girls, those are the development people and the operations people, and they do a number of agile methodologies during development with the client, whether it be remote or together. One thing being, which I find super exciting, is one developer sitting with the client's developer, looking at the same screen and developing and coding together to get to the same level and to have the same understanding of why we've made these particular decisions during development. So I think there are two sides which are quite important. However, the first one, identifying the real pain point, will greatly influence the second aspect of this.
And the kind of teams that, say, businesses need to have in order to have AI implemented within them. I mean, I know you're not an expert in supply chain, but clearly you can see the value in having the kind of AI technology implemented in today's modern supply chain. What kind of people do teams need to have? Do they need to have data experts, experts in AI, people that get technology? How easy is this? How hard?
Yeah, so I think what we're hearing from our clients quite a lot is there is a certain challenge hiring data scientists right now. Data scientists seem to be going to bigger IT companies, which obviously during this phase of the AI evolution, it absolutely makes sense, which is why we have strong partnerships with clients who already have an IT team, because they have a website, they have some sort of digitization that has already taken place in the last 10 years, whether those are typically IT architects. We have designers, also something which is a big plus if the client and when the client provide the designers that we have here. And then what we typically do is based on who the customer brings to this, we then include our data scientists. We also include our UX and UI design, so also differentiating here. And then at the end of this, we try to develop as one single team. So to give you an example of our IBM research that we do. So our IBM research facilities have grown immensely over the past 10, 15 years, because we've seen a real need to connect the different locations that we have to make sure that we don't just include the different job roles and job titles that we have there and the different skills that are absolutely required, but also to include certain life perspectives, certain perspectives that other people may be missing. So, looking at genders, looking at different skin colors, different backgrounds, to make sure that we see the obvious things during development that may have a negative impact on the system, to the outside world and to the inside world of the company.
Let's talk briefly about the current situation, the current pandemic that we're living through. Have you seen practical applications of AI that can help companies through this type of uncertainty?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll start with a public services project that we have recently started, and it's been released. So in Germany, the pandemic has been, we've been feeling the pandemic for the past few months, and it's having a bigger impact on us than we initially thought in January and February, especially in Germany. And what we are seeing here right now is that a lot of the older generation are struggling to get the right information or get the right information at the right time, and also distinguishing between a trustful source and a not so trustful source. So we've actually worked with the German government together to implement a fairly simple chatbot, but that has that extra capability. So I mentioned those accessibility features earlier. So understanding what are the current regulations and rules for the different counties that we have. So it's a federal system in Germany that we have. So for the different counties, we have different systems, but also understanding how can we connect this particular chatbot with the local health institutes. How can we connect this chatbot with the local political bodies that we have, so they can provide additional information? And also at the same time, how can we make it accessible for the older generation? This is something that is ongoing right now, that we are working on right now. So that's going quite well. Another thing we have seen is that companies are trying to focus on understanding where they can save certain, whether it be CO2 emissions
Hmm.
or understanding how to be more climate aware. Right now, it seems that a number of companies are trying out smaller projects to see, are they able to introduce perhaps a CO2 advisor for internal business trips that they do, to understand, are we able to learn from our previous data? Are we able to learn from the data that we have collected during COVID-19? Because it's immensely changed and we're seeing the difference in our business numbers that we are collecting. How can we incorporate this into this? So this is another bigger thing that we have going on. So this is actually something we're working on with the Siemens here in Munich. So very much looking forward for this to also be then implemented here in IBM internally. We're throwing our brains into this project to see what comes out of this. So I think those are the bigger things I've seen that seemed quite different from the past.
I think with all the mountains of data that we produce, right, it's obvious that we as humans have reached our capability or limitations with how we process all of this data, right? And yet all of this data will allow us to get more insight into consumer behavior, into the opportunities that we have, the trends, et cetera. So we're sort of sitting on a gold mine. And would you agree, or is it safe to say that AI is probably the one tool that can help us go through that gold mine?
Absolutely. So when we decided to create this business unit called Watson and Watson IoT, we wanted to. It took us a long time to be able to say, all right, now we are able to scale this on a much larger level than we used to. So we've seen a big development in the last 10, 15 years of sensor prices falling down and computing power immensely rising. So with this combined, we are now able to, as you correctly said, analyze larger and larger data sets with every year. There's new advancements in this. We are currently working on our quantum computing, which is owned also by IBM. We're doing lots of research in this space, and this is actually something that is located in Germany. So this will be another big advancement. However, we are still seeing a big challenge of most of the data that is being collected or that we have collected in the past of not being structured enough for our systems to understand. So this is something that we are still working on, even in 2020, helping our clients to convert this unstructured format into a structured format, or establishing and introducing processes to make sure that those that the data capture is already done in a standardized way. Because once we have this, the computing power, our services are ever evolving. However, this seems to be a bigger break right now than the technology.
Something else that I keep talking to people about is the opportunities that are coming out of this crisis. Yeah.
Mhm.
So the fact that, the coronavirus seems to have exposed a lot of weaknesses in certain supply chains, a lot of cracks, things that really working that well. And the opportunity now lies in being able to perhaps create a more resilient supply chain, a more sustainable business model, talk about new business models in general. How could AI help organizations reach those types of goals, especially around sustainability and around, a business model that is resilient?
Yeah, I think the key here is gaining a 360 view of what is taking place. I think what we're seeing here also in Germany are discussions in media about, we need to rethink our strategy of how we do supply chain. For smaller companies, for bigger companies, because we're seeing some challenges that we didn't anticipate beforehand. So I strongly believe that we need to pay close attention to the recent developments that we've had in the last 2 to 3 months, that we don't see that period of time as a period of time that will be over at some point. However, see it more rather as a way of understanding new possibilities, new creativity that we suddenly discovered within ourselves to try out different things. And we want to make sure that we want to be able to have this level of digitization starting point, very much the starting point, and the structured data with all of our partners on our supply chain. Because that way we are able to understand what is taking place right now and what may change in the future to make certain predictions on this. So I would say it's something we are seeing right now in the center with our clients of new ideas that are suddenly arising in certain industries, even in other industries. You have clients coming to us and saying, we did a small hackathon or small brainstorming session. Suddenly we had some time with our employees, and this is what came out of it. Do you think this is something that we could work on? So I very much encourage all companies to listen to their employees, because right now we have so many brains and sensors, human sensors outside at home, who are witnessing and observing so many different things. And it doesn't just apply to the development team, the data scientist team. That needs to be diverse. Different perspectives always help.
Yeah, it's everybody. And it's funny how you went straight into my next question, which was going to be about people. We talk about AI as this limitless power that is going to come in and take over all of the mundane tasks that people do. And, I'm not going to lie, it leaves some people wondering whether or not what that means for them, what that means for the average person in a factory, in a shop floor. What are the kinds of questions that the companies you work with are asking you about people? That's question one. And then question two, followed up by that, is where do you see the opportunities for people with AI?
Mm-hmm. So I think for the first question, we typically have key decision makers here in the center, and I typically have conversations with only the key decision makers. So for them, the most or one of the higher priorities, obviously, the financial aspect of how can we make this more effective? How can we make this more productive? However, even with those key decision makers, those conversations have changed in the last, especially in the last 12 months. So we've seen a number of examples where an AI system was being used externally, where human beings were being involved in the outcome of the decision or the recommendation that was being given, and it had a strong negative impact on that human being. So real consequences based off an AI system that we perhaps developed together. So now we are getting lots and lots of questions from those decision makers. Hey, when we get a recommendation from the system, my employees are asking me, why am I getting this? How I don't understand why this is the case, and I need to explain to my customer who's waiting for his loan why he will not get the loan. Why is that the case? I've known the customer for the past 10 years. It's simply not true. I have the experience. So understanding how can we break open the black box of AI, and understanding what data sets within the algorithm are causing this recommendation. Is there perhaps some bias in there that we didn't pay attention to because we used old data sets from perhaps 20 years ago, because that data set from that period of time is the only structured data set we have, and after that we had unstructured.
So Thilak, are you talking more about AI complementing the work of people, working together to make this happen? I think sometimes people see this as it's AI or a person. Are you envisioning a future where it's both?
It has to be 100%. So in my humble opinion, we are very, very far away from an AI system that is capable of doing things by itself, unless those outcomes are very absolute. Let's take the example of the LCD panel again. Damage or not a damage. We can work with that. And what's the outcome if something goes wrong right now? It's about 10,000, 15,000, something like that, along those lines. We can still work with that. However, we know what the problem is right now. What we are seeing right now, though, is that we are still at this narrow AI stage of where we can solve one particular problem. However, as soon as external elements come into this, let's take the example, we've trained an AI system to identify horses, because why not? We want to identify horses, and we've deployed the system. Suddenly we see a number of donkeys also in the image. We didn't train the system to do this. Suddenly the count is wrong. So how and what are we doing to prevent these types of situations? This is where we need us humans. So another big reason why we as IBM, we don't call it artificial intelligence, but augmented intelligence. We are augmenting the human's intelligence, the human's employees right now, and providing further infos and further facts that may help with the overall decision that is being taken place. And we have very small number of cases where this is fully automated. Only in those cases where there is right now no consequence to human beings. So that's the major thing we are telling also our clients. We cannot work on a system in absolute most of the times to replace human beings, because A, we are very far away from it, and B, is that something that we want right now? Is that solving the problem that you are having right now?
So I like the way that you talk about augmented intelligence, and I guess that goes back to some of the things that we talked about a little while ago, which is um, when business leaders or unit leaders go into someone like you guys and say, "I want AI." They don't know why, but they know they have to have AI. It's probably because they're envisioning something to replace a human or to replace a mundane task. If you Do you think that companies that go in with a position of I want to augment what my humans are doing, what my team is doing, I want to speed it up, I want to, work on what I'm currently doing to solve this problem, do you think they have more success? And is that the kind of advice you would give to leaders?
Absolutely. So typically, from my personal experience here in the center, I can very much say that those clients who are from the very start understand that this particular system will support the existing experts that they have on site. As soon as that realization has taken place, we typically have in the next meeting those experts sitting at the same table, and we make sure that we include their expert input, their experience, their vast experience from the past decades, to make sure to include this in the system so that we build a system that is working for those experts and not the other way around. In other scenarios, we've had the moments, or we've had certain delays in the project because those experts were being pulled in way too late, or the client has decided to do something else than what we initially agreed upon, or there was a later understanding of how the system would actually be used in production. So I would very much recommend to see this as an augmented intelligence for all of the different areas that you see. Even if you decide not to go with IBM, please see it as an augmented intelligence. It will very much help you in the planning and pre-deployment of your system.
I want to move now to asking you about what's exciting about AI down the line. For those of us that are not techie people like you, that perhaps you can see the passion of AI coming to you. I mean, what's ahead? What does the future look like for the use of AI in industry?
Let me start with a personal example or private example an anecdote that I witnessed a few years ago, because I think this offline example outlines how the future could look like in the space of AI. So I actually went to my skin doctor about 3, 4, 5, probably 5 or 6 years ago. About 5 or 6 years ago, because I had some. So there's something around here. I went to my skin doctor and said, "Hey, look, I'm having some problems here." This was actually in Germany. He looked at me, and I was getting worried because is everything all right? And it took him about 3 to 4, 5 minutes. He didn't say a word, and then after 5 minutes, I started worrying. Oh, damn it! I don't want to. I want to have fun. What are you doing to me? And after about 6, 7 minutes, he then said to me, "Mr. Mahendran, I'm extremely sorry. I don't have experience with dark skin color or brown skin color, and I just don't have a clear answer, or I'm not able to give you a qualified answer. I'm extremely sorry. However, I have a colleague in mind, which is why it took me so long. I have a colleague in mind. I'll give you his number. Perhaps you can contact him." And I found this extremely fascinating, because my assumption at that point was previous doctors either didn't tell me, or they didn't tell me that they weren't sure, or they had that experience beforehand. So I started to think, what does this mean for our AI systems? Because it's us humans who are training these systems, right? What are we doing to make sure that we don't include our pride of, I don't want to let them know that I don't know this answer, or our unconscious biases. We have a number of unconscious biases. So IBM research has actually identified 150 different unconscious biases that are relevant for AI system. And I'm happy to share this perhaps in the show notes or in the extra notes there. And I strongly believe that in the next 5 years, we will pay so much more attention to making our AI systems more trustworthy. Why do we want to do that? Because we don't see acceptance outside of the business world as much as we would like to. And we strongly believe that we are able to achieve our next milestones much quicker if and when we are able to also include and pull in our society, because that's another big aspect and perspective that we want to include. Another thing which I think is exciting about this particular area is taking the example of the doctor, the skin doctor. What, his alternative right now is, or at that moment was, all right, I've let my patient know of the right experts, and I need to do additional training now. I need to absorb lots of data sets. Obviously, us humans, it either takes us a long time to absorb large data sets, or we are just genius and it works. But most of the times it doesn't work. Unfortunately, I've tried it out. I thought it was a genius when I was younger. Unfortunately, that didn't seem to be true. So I strongly believe that we will be able to adapt and change these systems at a much faster pace, and understand also much more about us humans, but how we think, why we think this certain way. Because in this particular space, it's not just developers, not just IT people. We have people, sociologists, we have psychologists who are working on this area to understand how we humans think. So I'm excited to see what the scientific outcome will be based on that, because this will very much affect our technology that we have here. Another thing which I'm extremely excited about is the computing power. I strongly believe that in the next 5 years, quantum computing will become a thing. We know a number of one particular IT company who we are friends with, but I probably shouldn't name their name right now. They are actually releasing this as a service. So exciting things, using a super duper powerful computer for about 1 hour to solve one complex problems that takes us right now about a week or two. I think that's super fascinating.
Well, that will only just uncover the possibilities of what we as humans can do. I guess if we're freed up from absorbing all that data, crunching that data, the possibilities are, I guess, endless for our own human capacity.
That's something I keep telling, I keep telling my friends and people that I know outside of the business world or outside of the IT world, who always seem to be so confused why I'm so excited about this. But it will inevitably give us so much more time to concentrate on the more complex issues, because there is a good reason why we as humans are still alive on this planet after all. And I think we should make good use of this. And we're trying to get to that point by using technology. And I think we're doing a good job right now. And we need further help from all aspects of this society to make sure that this particular system that we develop for a particular use case is actually serving the people at the end of the day.
Let's talk a little bit about we alluded to it at the beginning, which was the type of teams that businesses need to have in order to, I guess, I don't want to be cliche or corny and say, the next generation or the next phase of business or whatever, but it is different times, isn't it? We talked about skill sets. You talked about hiring more data people. Let's talk about diverse backgrounds, because what I mean by that isn't just the term diversity and inclusion. It's also about people from different positions, different professions, different thinking. Do you think that kind of diverse thinking is something that will help in the development of new technologies and the development of new business methodologies?
Absolutely, I 100% agree. So to share some experience with IBM, I think about 5 years ago, we've decided we also want to reach out to people without formal education that we have recently, in the past decades, have always required. You need a degree, you need a university's degree to start with it. Here in Germany, for example, we have a number of people doing vocational trainings, and it's something that has a high reputation also within the society, which may be different in other countries. How can we integrate them into our workforce? Because they bring a specific skill that we don't have. We have the specific academic view on things. And it's not always
and academic thinking. I mean, we're sort of trained
right
from being in kindergarten that you essentially solve a problem in one of 2 or 3 different ways, right? I mean, you know what I mean? But like, we've sort of been trained how to be students, trained how to be academics, trained how to be engineers, and so it colors your thinking across the board. So going back to your example, you brought people in. Do they think differently? Do they bring something else?
Absolutely. So I actually had a good conversation today during lunch exactly about this. So a colleague of mine was telling me, they were trying to solve one particular problem with another IBMer, and they were thinking for about half an hour, 45 minutes. And then one of the non-academic person has entered the room because they thought perhaps he has a good view. It took him 30 seconds. Hey, you guys stupid. Why don't you just do it like that? So, oh, wow. We didn't even think about this. And I thought that was so fascinating because these people, these IBMers, those were quite senior people, 50 plus, I would say. So they've had 20, 30, 40 years of experience in the IT world. And before that, the academic world as well, right? So it made such a big difference. I thought that was fascinating. The second thing is, since we're speaking of academia right now, in the space of AI, in the space of research, in academics for AI. Did you know 85% of professors are actually male and only 15% are female? And we don't have clear numbers on backgrounds, on ethnicity. That's the one.
Yeah.
Skin color, those things, we don't have numbers on that. But that's another, concerning number that we should think about what this could mean for our AI system, because we are basing so many things on academia and research. So we need to make sure that those areas are also well covered. We are doing this on a developers team right now, on developers level. When the client doesn't have enough developers, we try to stock this up and make sure that we have the right balance of teams in there. It all definitely depends on the use case. When you are addressing only 20-year-old males, perhaps it could make sense to have a higher number of younger developers who are actually male to be in this team. But those are the questions that we need to ask ourselves. Here within the IBM Watson Center, and since we have a number of projects that take place pretty much on a weekly basis, we try to have a good mix in age diversity. We try to have a good mix in cultural diversity, gender diversity, and especially when you are on those developers floor, it's exciting to see that most developers are fairly similar, despite their background, despite their gender. It's a similar nature of mindset, and I love being there, and I love being there with clients because it's just such a different world than the business world that I'm usually in.
So let me ask you, I guess, some practical advice that you would give to, in this particular instance, because we're talking to supply chain leaders, practical advice in order to maximize the possibility of AI succeeding within their business. What would you say?
Yeah, so I think going forward, there are a number of things that can be done. One thing we have seen in the past year, which has become a hot topic, is the AI lifecycle. How can we truly understand the entire lifecycle of an AI system? When does an AI system's lifecycle end? Those types of questions we've just released now, an AI fact sheets. So I can very much recommend this. This is actually open source, coming straight from our IBM research team in the States. And so they've released a number of questions and a guide to better understand how we can include compliance, accountability into the algorithms. So the things that we didn't pay attention to in the first 2 to 3 years, where it was all about developing, trying out new things. Now we need to pay attention to also understanding what are the local regulations. So as an example, here in the EU, the EU Commission is right now discussing a way of standardizing the ratings of AI systems. So if you are deploying this on the market, you need to be able to say, hey, these are the data sets we've used, and these is the A icon it will get because it's using XYZ. We're working on this right now with the European Commission, but we strongly believe it will help a number of companies if we start this process already today with those companies. So compliance accountability, I would say, is a bigger topic from an internal point of view. But also what we are seeing now is if you truly want to maximize an AI system, also make sure that you have the correct documentation within your company, because it's fairly common from experience that data scientists go from one company to the other, or those teams mix around, and that knowledge gets lost. And once that knowledge gets lost, and especially when the AI, when the algorithm is a black box, you can very much just move it to the side and develop a new one. And that's something that you definitely want to avoid. And one thing that will help here is also making sure to include some sort of explainability into the model itself. So not for the end user, but into the model itself for your developers to understand what is taking place. And for this, we've actually released an AI explainability toolkit 360, it's called. This is also hosted on GitHub, where the companies listening right now, or data scientists team listening right now, there are a number of algorithms and metrics included there to test your existing system against this reference to see if we can identify some sort of bias into the system, because those are the elements where we've seen most of the damage being done to companies.
Thilak, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for being part of FinTV and talking to us about AI and the future and the possibilities and what we can expect and how we can maximize for it to improve and to improve our lives. Thanks so much for being on here. I really appreciate it. And I hopefully we'll see you again in another episode.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
For those of you watching, we'll see you again on the next episode of FinTV. Thank you.